you know, something had felt off. Just in the wind, just in the breeze, something had felt like it was missing in my life and your life, in our collective lives, the flow of the life force of the universe, man, that we'd been missing out on. Like there was just something that I'd misplaced that, if I could just remember where it was and kind of put it back where it belonged, everything would just be better. Then I saw a news story that Wilfred Zaha was apparently on the way back to Crystal Palace, and immediately I realized that that was it. That Wilfred Zaha, the Crystal Palace legend, him not being on Crystal Palace, that was causing the problem. But there's actually another team apparently trying to hijack this move, and the whole thing has been very weird. So let me give you the tea, the espresso, the 411 here. Wilfred Zaha is apparently on the move again. Right now, Wilfred Zaha has been involved in a lot of drama. He is basically the human embodiment of the "Who Want Me 100% No" meme. Because he is a player that is very, very good at a club like Crystal Palace, but doesn't seem to be capable of achieving that same sort of voluptuousness, shall we say, at a major club, evidenced by his quick trip to United right at the end of Sir Alex Ferguson's tenure that kind of flamed out in the same way that Moyes did. Just wasn't that good, and he went back to Crystal Palace. The point is, though, Wilfred Zaha has made over 450 appearances for Crystal Palace. He is basically, inarguably, the best Premier League player that Crystal Palace has ever had, and they are not through with him. Now, he has spent the past year at Galatasaray. Now, Galatasaray is in Turkey, which is why we are now staring at two tweets that are in Turkish. But at Galatasaray, things actually hadn't been going that well for him. Okay, he had about 9 goals in 45 appearances. He had 9 goals in the Turkish league, and he also scored against Manchester United in the Champions League, but he made only 13 league starts. So even though he was one of Galatasaray's highest paid players at 31, he wasn't actually a huge part of the rotation. Now, he had said before he went over to Galatasaray that it was basically, a lifelong dream. I want to play in the Champions League. This is my opportunity to play in the Champions League, and I'm sorry, but I have to go. This is from Sport Bible. They actually were able to pull the quote. This is basically what he said when he decided to leave Crystal Palace. Was it a tough decision? It was. But at the same time, I thought it's time for me to move on. There were younger players coming through, and I felt as though it gave them an opportunity to shine as well. I had been at Crystal Palace for a long time, and I feel I'd accomplished everything I could there, which is probably fair. It was always my dream to play in the Champions League, to get that opportunity. Finally, that was something that, I couldn't turn down. I had to wave goodbye to Crystal Palace, the club I loved for many years. So he did go play in the Champions League with Galatasaray. They, of course, were in the group with Manchester United and Copenhagen and whoever the hell the other team was in that group that ended up winning the group in the first place. I know United got knocked out and Copenhagen finished second, so he got to play in some knockouts as well down in the Europa League. It was probably a good time for Wilf Zaha, and of course, he picked up a league winner's medal in Turkey, and he's getting paid a really significant amount of money. But it turns out that amount of money was actually a pay cut in the first place, which makes this a little bit more uncomfortable that Wilf Zaha actually went and did this. It's not surprising that a Premier League club can outspend a Turkish club, but it is surprising that he left. I guess I did just read the statement about him wanting Champions League, so it makes a little sense, but it's got to be insulting if you're Crystal Palace, because according to the London Standard, he turned down a £200,000 a week offer, only to then go and make £170,000 a week at Galatasaray. But now all is forgiven. We go back to these Turkish tweets we were staring at. Now, first, it was one Turkish report that a Premier League club other than Al Ittihad is also interested in Wilf Zaha, right? So the idea that it isn't just a Saudi club that did for him, and then a couple days later, we get Yagiz Sabunshahru, who I'm very sorry for absolutely butchering his name, but I tried. Wilf Zaha has reached an agreement with Crystal Palace. The player is waiting for the clubs to complete the deal. Now, this is interesting because this is actually, it's still up in the air. Now, this tweet says that he has reached personal terms with Crystal Palace. He's just waiting for the clubs to figure out the logistics of how he's going to end up there. David Ornstein, on the other hand, says that there is actually another club trying to hijack this deal, which would suck for Crystal Palace. Now, the former owner of Crystal Palace thinks the deal is already done. That would be Simon Jordan. Now, he had a lot to say. He said, I think he was a wonderful player. I don't care what everyone else thinks about him. He had more talent than most players I've seen. He should have gone to a bigger and better, he should have gone on to bigger and better things than Palace, which is such a weird thing for an American to hear. Like, I realize there's a lot of fatalism and self-deprecation when it comes to, like, English football fandom, but dissing your own club like that's just hilarious. He also says he could have played for Real Madrid, but fast forwarding, he certainly was a success at Palace, and I think for him now coming back to Palace, maybe it's time for home. Or maybe David Ornstein's picking up on this other club, because apparently Crystal Palace isn't the only Premier League club that's actually interested in Wilf Zaha. Right, Leicester City, the team that just bounced right back up from the Championship, they are also interested in a loan. And it has to be a loan. He's under contract at Galatasaray until 2026, even though he left last summer. He's only been there for 1 year. So the year I told you about is the only year that he was there, and the only year outside of that brief stint with United that he's not been on Crystal Palace since his academy days. So we've got Wilf Zaha, who's at Galatasaray, and seems pretty clear that it's going to be a move. And we've got multiple Premier League clubs that want to bring him back. And that brings us to the title that TalkSport had, which is Wilf Zaha is desperate to return to the Premier League. I'm trying to do a lot of reading between the lines here, because as I'm recording this, there's a lot up in the air. We've got Turkish reporters saying it's already confirmed he'll go to Crystal Palace, which just feels right. We've got Ornstein saying that maybe Leicester's in there and they're going to hijack the deal. We've got Wilf old quotes and old owner quotes, and honestly, I don't even know what's going on, but I know what I want to happen. I want Wilfried Zaha to be back on Crystal Palace because it doesn't feel the same. And as much as Wilfried Zaha always gave the feeling of somebody that was too good for Crystal Palace, or that was always kind of, he had one eye on his next move. The truth is, Wilf Zaha made over 450 appearances for Crystal Palace. Right, and he was and is the best player they've just ever had in the Premier League. And he, to his credit, basically only ever speaks glowingly about his entire life at Crystal Palace. He's from right next to the stadium. And in the modern era, there just really aren't as many players like Wilf Zaha as there used to be. And there's something comforting about the fact that it seems the gravity is pulling him home. Now, the deal is basically they're going to have to pay Wilf Zaha's entire wage, which is £170,000 a week. But considering they offered him a £200,000 a week contract for like 4 years last year, I feel like that's a deal that's going to be able to get done. Now, if Wilf Zaha goes to Leicester, it's going to be hilarious and awkward, and I am so here for it. But he should go to Crystal Palace. It's the only thing left that makes any sense in the world. We've got Chelsea buying 100 players. Antony saying he's going to be great again. All this madness in the world of football. Wilf Zaha returning to Crystal Palace after getting, it's like a relationship. He took a break for a little while. He wanted to see what was out in the world. He went and played in the Champions League. He didn't get a ton of playing time in the Turkish League. And he went, you know what? Maybe being at Crystal Palace, it wasn't so bad after all. He got it all out of his system, and he comes on back, and he's going to retire an absolute legend with over 500 Crystal Palace appearances. The world needs that. It would be a healing moment. And if you're wondering why he would stay there longer than 1 year, apparently it would be a loan to buy, and Galatasaray wants like £9 million, which is a lot to spend for a 31-year-old, but it's not a lot to spend for the memories. And that's the most important thing. Come home, Wilf. Come home. Seriously, though, how many of you forgot that Wilfried Zaha was a player and forgot that he had gone to Turkey? I'm not saying I did. I'm just saying.